Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 8 of Sprung. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This is probably one of my favorite openings to an episode, just in general, because it's like, well, cold open-esque openings, because I'm like, this is the most chaotic thing to go down, because it's like, okay, so Barb finds out about, Rooster and Wiggles. Well, they were up in his room, like, about to have sex, if not in the, well, probably actually in the middle of sex. So Barb gets a knife, chases her outside, she locks herself in the car, Jack tries to stop the whole thing, Rooster comes out in Wiggles' clothes and like her underwear and her top, just because it's like, right, when you're being rushed, when you like walked in while you're having sex and you have to put on clothes really quickly, you just grab whatever you can. Then like stuff starts going down because Melvin shows up, because I was like, hey guys, I got out of prison early too because of COVID. So I was like, I love that. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but because it's like you stole a whole bunch of high school equipment. You would think that would fall under the category of, but I guess it's like, right, as long as it was like kind of a like non like bad felony, because I was thinking like, no, it doesn't have to be misdemeanors. It's like any felonies or whatever, as long as it was something that wasn't too like extremely bad or whatever. So he got out. I didn't expect that twist in that development. And then like Wiggles drops the bomb of like, oh yeah, like me and Rooster are getting married, which Barb's like, what? Melvin's like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, you left me to die under a weighted blanket, and I tried to call you, but I couldn't remember your last name. So I'm like, oh. So, and then Rooster went to get the gun, but then like a mailman's nearby, so like Jack's like, no, put that away. He throws the knife away. Rooster trying to thief Frost a gun, puts it in a microwave, bullet goes off. They're trying to pretend like, oh, like there was a pot that was in the microwave, and their neighbor, she's just kind of calling them dipshits, which I love that Barbara got pissed at her, being like, oh, shut up. Like, we didn't know there was like screaming. We didn't say anything about the screaming from your place when you were having sex with the mailman who was walking by. He's like, hey, keep me out of this shit. I love it so much. And so it's like, oh man, that all went down. And I love Jack utilizing that skill yet again of like, saying Melvin's name a lot of times. And he's like, I like it when you say my name a lot. And he wants to hang out with his best man, Jack. And I do think that's going to be really interesting. I think that friendship is going to obviously have started because of manipulation, but I think Jack and Melvin might actually end up being friends, maybe even Rooster and Melvin too, but we'll see. I think that might actually turn into an actual genuine friendship, given enough time. We'll have to ultimately have to wait and see, but I'd be curious to see if that ended up happening. But Melvin's like, yo, I want to go and get high, because where he wants to go, the laws are a little less strict about, weed and stuff, so he's going to go to like a weed shop. And they do go there, and lo and behold, who's running the weed shop? Spike, who I was like wondering at first. I was like, oh, why does it's like, well, it's because of him you went to jail, because you got the weed from him. It's like, oh no, you have extra reason to hate Spike, because Spike sold you out to prevent himself from going to jail. He turned you in. He's the, I guess the cops were maybe watching Spike for a while, and then they like busted. I don't know. Like, once again, like how they just happened upon that, I guess Jack was selling weed. That wasn't like the first time. So once again, it's probably like the cops were kind of onto their operation from the beginning. So I do love that older Spike is played by Stephen. I lost my mind. I was like, dude, I love it, man. It's like, and I feel so bad because I feel like a lot of times he gets like, he gets to play complex characters, whether it be like Trevor or whether it's Pike from Snowpiercer, but a lot of times he gets to be like just a straight up douchebag, or like, in the case of The Walking Dead, just a straight up villain. But yeah, he kind of gets to play, gets allocated to like the dickish characters a lot of times, at least from what I've seen of his work. So I love that. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I love him calling it. He's like, oh yeah, your husband, I'm gonna come over. He's like, yeah, he might be working. It's sad. Like, he's working the graveyard shift, but I'm the one that's going to bone or whatever. He said something like that. And he paused and is like, well, what do you mean you don't get what that means? And Jack, so filled with rage, even with Melvin in the car with him, decides like, oh no, like I'm gonna get this guy. And he's like, Melvin's like, I don't want to be going away for like a murder. So, but Jack doesn't murder him immediately. In fact, kidnaps him. I'm like, that's interesting. Which even he's like, cool. I was a weed seller, then an ex-con, failed art thief, soon to be bank robber, and now kidnapper. So a lot to add to the autobiography. So that's definitely going to be. Jack's main plan is to torture Spike. I literally had to stop myself because I was literally thinking to myself, Pike, you know. But he has to stop. He wants to torture Spike and make him go through everything he went through. It's like, granted, I think like we have to move with this whole operation soon because I don't have 26 years to torture him to make up for the 26 years I lost for him. So he made a list of everything. And I love the whole thing of like, yeah, Jack's angry because they've never really seen him like this. But even Barbara's like, well, to be fair, he lost 26 of his life. It was only a matter of time before he snapped. I mean, because like out of any of the group, like, I mean, they all kind of have their good-natured elements, but Jack in particular, and it's like him kind of losing his mind like this, kind of finally snapping after everything. It kind of makes sense. But I love the whole, like, them putting on the heads, like him in particular putting on, like, the rabbit head, and they're doing everything. It's like, oh, like, taking from him, making a whole bunch of noise so that he can't sleep, making him eat terrible food that they blended together in the blender, and then, like, no privacy, and just, like, everything they did to him. It's like, oh, like, that is... I mean, it's like, it's pretty jacked up what they're doing because they are torturing him, but then you add like the kind of like lighthearted shenanigans music that's kind of playing in the background along with all of it. But then we kind of have this real moment with Jack when eventually that was no longer, it didn't feel good anymore. He's like, in fact, it made me feel good at first, but now I'm just like angry again. And it's like, well, it's not just angry at Spike. He's angry at the whole system. He's angry at the judge. He's angry at the laws, and he's angry at himself. He's like, I could have just worked with my uncle, but I didn't. I decided to skate around and sell weed, and that's why I got busted. It's just like, I mean, to be fair, it's like understandable. You lost so much of your life because of this. You lost more than half your life because of this. I mean, well, how, you know, because I would assume, like, he was, like, what, like, probably, like, 18 at the time or something like that, maybe-ish. So it's, like, he lost double, like, he spent double his lifetime in prison. That super sucks. That, like, you know, so much on your life you missed out on. So much time of your parents you missed out on. And he's angry at himself that he's like, but really it's like, I ruined my own life with my own choices. But it's like, you know, it's like, right, we don't all, you know, you didn't ruin your life. And he's like, well, because like Barb's like, yeah, you know, we all kind of like do things that kind of ruin our life. She's like, I went 3 years to nursing school or something like that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And Bruce was like, I've had a mustache since third grade. I've done nothing with. And Gloria's like, I wasted a year talking to a guy who was pretending to be 28 and kind of lying about who he was. It's like, you still have your life. It's like, right, you already lost 26 years of your life. So do you want to spend the rest of that, you know, of your using that 26 years, like holding on to that 26 years and making it a life sentence? Or do you want to finally just kind of let that go and learn to forgive, especially learn to forgive yourself? So I thought that was actually beautiful all around. And because, yeah, Jack does seem like he was so even-kiltered. And it almost makes you wonder, I mean, and maybe that's just Jack being Jack, trying to, like, just like he just has a Robin Hood, you know, element to him regardless. But it makes you almost wonder, like, is his way kind of, because he felt so screwed over by the system and so many people, do you think him getting back at people by, like, trying to do good by doing, like, the whole Robin Hood thing, do you think that is a byproduct of his way of kind of like screwing over, like getting back at anyone because he couldn't necessarily get back at the people who screwed him over necessarily? I don't know. Luckily they were wearing a mask and obviously it wasn't their truck, so when they eventually do let Spike go, they're probably not, he probably won't know, like, to come after them. I mean, he hasn't seen Jack in like 20-some years, so he probably wouldn't even recognize. But it'd be interesting if they do eventually cross paths again, but I highly doubt that. But I do love the whole thing of, like, he's like, I promise I'll never sleep with any wives again. It's like, no, we're not killing you, but yeah, stop sleeping with married women. And they let him go, so. And Jack actually does feel better. So I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect of this episode for him. Another angle to the episode as a whole is because of the aftermath of the Wiggle situation, which there was a whole, well, now Barb has to go on her date with Stan, and they're doing it through the fence and stuff. And obviously she's complaining about Wiggles. It's like, oh, she's not good enough for my son. She's going to mess up like the gene pool or whatever, you know. But then Stan kind of thinks like, right, like, are you really mad about Wiggles, or is it just you're afraid to lose your son? And I love that he's like, yeah, my mom didn't want me to go to prom, but that backfired because I stayed at home. But then I lost my virginity to her friend Carol. Rest her soul. So I thought that was actually interesting because Barb started seeing a little too much of like, oh, so Stan and his mother's relationship, that's actually me and Rooster. He's like, yeah, I love, because it's like, she's like, oh yeah, like, you take care of your mom. She's like, yeah, I did see you kind of pull her out the tub and like clip her toenails. He's like, that's unfortunate that you saw that. But then also like, it's like, yeah, I've seen you floss his teeth out. She's like, yeah, but like stuff gets stuck and he like squirms if I do it inside. So, which makes me think about Melvin, who has those toothpicks, those little floss things. And it's like, oh, what do you do if you're done? He's like, oh, no, I usually put them back in the packet. And Jack's like, he got some ramen stuck in his teeth. I love that. It's like, yeah, messing with a guy who's been locked up for 26 years, instead of calling it ramen, it's ramen. And it's like, oh, everyone loves ramen. It's like, hey, I love that. That's super cool. Nevertheless. But Stan's the one that kind of put things in perspective for Barb, and Barb's like, yeah, I think she talked about like her sister, who's like, I think her sister's a crack addict. She was like, yeah, my dad was like a Methodist for like a week or something like that. So it's like, yeah, we've got felons in the family and stuff like that. So, and Stan going to take care of his mom, and it's like putting that sweet fish in his mouth so it can soak, kind of like dissolve and be easier for her chew. I'm like, oh. And Barb being like, I'm not going to baby bird food into have Rooster like baby bird food in my mouth. So it's like, right, I'm inviting Wiggles over for dinner just so I can prove that she's no good. Which I love that no one stopped Wiggles, like, because she was running away when everything was all said and done. And then Melvin and Jack just drive by her like no one said anything. And it was actually really sweet when Barb like questions Wiggles about all this stuff, and she knows so much about it's like, okay, what do you do if he has brain freeze? Nothing, because he likes brain freeze. That's why he drinks Slurpees. And it's like, Wiggles does know a lot about Rooster, and you're like, it's their relationship, it's like they are really sweet and really made for each other. And in that moment, like, Barb's like, you know, it's like, okay, what's his biggest secret? And she's like, I promised I wouldn't say. And he's like, darn it. And she's like, darn it, I knew he was hiding something from me. But she kind of aced it, and it's like, oh, what does he want to be? And it's like, oh, what does he want to be when he gets older? Taller, or something like that. And it was really sweet. And I love Wiggles being like, oh my God, your mom is awesome. Because I forgot the line from last episode. It's like, she was like, you know what you said when your mom said I was garbage? And Rooster was like, you're garbage can, not garbage cannot. So... And I love that, like, the moment, like, Melvin was like, no, we're cool. I actually got you guys, like, a wedding gift, and brought them a whole bunch of, like, gummies and stuff. And then she started, like, knocking them back. I was like, stop. And I'm assuming she ate all of them by herself. I'm like, that's not good. I mean, to be fair, Melvin was blitzed out of his mind. That's why we got the whole end sequence, which I do think that was pretty dope. Like, he's listening to the music, and he starts getting paranoid, because he already was. I love that with paranoia, of just kind of like that whole thing of like, you know, just no one saying anything. And it's like, what? And he was looking around like who said something? What was that? And then like the music is playing in the episode, and then like he's like looking around. I'm like, what the fuck is he looking for? And then he finds the headphones and he puts them on, and then the music shifts. I was like, that's so neat how you did that. I really like that, making it seem like, okay, the music's just playing in the background because of the episode, but it's like, no, it's actually playing in the headphones. That's what he was losing his mind about. He's like, do I hear music? What's going on? And then him kind of relaxing on the couch. So I do hope they do eventually involve Melvin. I mean, Wiggles is in the middle of this too. So, and I really think him and Jack could end up being really good friends. And I think it'd be really interesting if like Melvin was like Brewster's best man at a wedding or something like that. I don't know. You know, something crazy like that. I think they could all end up getting along really well. I would love that. But, And I do love that after Wiggles is eating the gummies, the entire episode, she's just like dancing in the background. I love why they're wearing helmets and stuff when they bring him inside to like poop. And it's like, okay, like, you know, to get rid of its privacy, it's like poop. And you can see her like dancing in the background. She's not wearing any helmet or anything. I love it. Like she's not wearing like a mask or anything to cover up her head. But ultimately, Barb took away from the whole conversation. And I love Ruthie being like, oh, you should ask her some questions now because she's high. She's really smart when she's high. He's like, or maybe not. I don't know because I'm usually high at the same time. But she's like, no, she passed. And it's like, because you really do love her, don't you? He's like, yeah, more than anything. And she hugs onto him and it's like, she's like, I'm taking Gloria's advice. Sometimes it's just, you got to let go. And she's looking at a picture of her husband, and Rooster. And he's like, okay, I should go tell her the good news. And she's like, no, just a little bit longer. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And it turns out the little vacuum duster, it turns out that is in fact where her husband's ashes were. I figured as much the way she was kissing it. It turns out like she had talked to Stan about it this episode about like what had happened and she had to put him in the duster. So like I do love like explaining the credit sequence like that the next episode. But just kind of once again, another sweet element to the episode, but also kind of getting some closure for Jay. I mean, plus it helps that he saw the amount of money they're planning on stealing from Paula being like 2.5 mil. So it's like, yeah, that's very nicely split 4 ways. So everyone's going to walk away with a good chunk of change. So, I guess that's like the final result after everything. That might just be after just the painting, because she was like, oh, they're going to sell the painting, so that might just be what the painting's worth, or maybe it is just like a culmination of everything, because it started with like the 46,000, and obviously with the auction and everything, Gloria's been keeping track of it, so the total might be 2.5 million. I would assume that would just be from the painting, but it might just be like everything in totality. But either way, that's a good chunk of change that they're going to be making, so I'm excited to see where things going to go. Once again, I always need to keep my mouth shut about like how long a season's going to be, because I always end up being wrong. Because I probably saw 10 somewhere and for whatever reason had 8 stuck in my head. So maybe it's 10 episodes, maybe it's 13. I'm assuming it's going to be 10, but you know, either way, I'm excited to see the next episodes next week. Regardless, I'm curious to see. Because Gloria still hasn't 100% planned everything out. Because even in this episode, you know, I believe it was this episode that Barb was like, yeah, like, how much, I'm running out, like, you and this scotch tape, I need you to, like, to hurry up and finish up your plan. And, like, Gloria's like, yeah, I'm figuring it out. So, the plan still hasn't been fully ironed out yet. So, once again, I hope they do bring Melvin on board, because I think that would be interesting. And I'd say we're going to be seeing a lot more, well, at least probably making some pop-ins here and there in the next episodes, maybe. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next. It makes you wonder, will like Barb and Stan, will that actually turn into a real thing? You kind of want something to happen between her and the fake Jean-Michel. You know, I think I saw his name last episode. I think it was Hank. So I hope something happens between them eventually. But you know, maybe this whole Barb and Stan thing will actually turn into something. Maybe not. We'll also may have to wait and see. But either way, like I said, I'm excited to see where the next episodes take us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.